Henry Kissinger, who died on Wednesday at his home in Connecticut, towered over post-World War II U.S. foreign policy like no one else. He has seen a master tactician in his role as Secretary of State to Presidents Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, and critics criticized his disregard for human rights and democracy in the Vietnam War and elsewhere. But for Henry Kissinger, ending the divisive Vietnam War was a top priority. And upon taking office as U.S. President, Nixon and Kissinger began a policy of Vietnamization, which forced the South Vietnamese allies to take on a larger role so that U.S. troops could withdraw. Now, seeking to strengthen the U.S. hand ahead of peace talks, Nixon and Kissinger authorized a 1969 to 1970 bombing campaign in Laos and Cambodia, which was aimed at disrupting rebel movement into South Vietnam. Now, the bombing, not authorized by U.S. Congress, was kept secret from the public, and it did not halt the infiltration, but killed thousands of civilians and helped the rise of the genocidal Khmer Rouge. Now, Kissinger traveled several times to Paris, at first secretly for talks with North Vietnamese negotiator. An agreement was finally signed in January 1973 that effectively ended the U.S. military operations, and the two men were jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, although only Kissinger accepted it. Now, taped conversations with Nixon later revealed that Kissinger had fully expected South Vietnam to fall after the accords. Kissinger also overlooked Pakistan's mass atrocities as Bangladesh won independence in 1971, and he believed that the U.S. interest was in keeping Islamabad as the quiet go-between with China. Now, more than the failure of U.S. diplomacy, it was Kissinger's strategic moves that thwarted any constructive role for Washington in preventing the crisis. And as per the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, Kissinger doubted India's capacity to win a war in East Pakistan and cut it off from West Pakistan. Also, he was overtly optimistic about China coming to Pakistan's help by opening another front and the reluctance of Soviet Union to act under U.S. pressure. And neither of the two happened.